Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna Punyashravana Kirtana Hridayantastho hi abhadrani vidonoti suhritsutam Nashtaprayesha Vadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Ruttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nishtiki. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 29, titled Talks Between Narada and King Prachinibarhi, texts 80 and 81. Text number 80. Maitreya Uvacha Bhagavada Mukhyo Bhagavan Narado Hamshayorgatim Pradarshaya Himam Amantriya Siddhalokam Tato Gamat. Maitreya Uvacha Bhagavata Mukhyo Bhagavan Narado Hamshayorgatim Pradarshaya Himam Amantriya Siddhalokam Tato Gamat. Maitreya Uvacha Bhagavata Mukhyo Bhagavan Narado Hamshayorgatim Pradarshya Hiyamam Amantriya Siddhalokam Tato Gamat. Synonyms: Maitreya Vacha, Maitreya said, Bhagavata of the devotees, Mukhya the chief, Bhagavan the most powerful, Narada, Narada Muni, Hamshayo of the living entity and the Lord, Gatim constitutional position, Pradrashya having shown, he certainly, Amum him the king, Amantriya after inviting, Siddhalokam to Siddhaloka, Tata thereafter, Agamat departed. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The great sage Maitreya continued, the supreme devotee, the great saint Narada, thus explained to King Prachinibari the constitutional position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity. After giving an invitation to the king, Narada Muni left to return to Siddhaloka. Purport: Siddhaloka and Brahmaloka are both within the same planetary system. Brahmaloka is understood to be the highest planet within this universe. Siddhaloka is considered to be one of the satellites of the Brahmaloka. The inhabitants of Siddhaloka have all the powers of yogic mysticism. From this verse, it appears that the great sage Narada is an inhabitant of Siddhaloka, although he travels to all the planetary systems. All the residents of Siddhaloka are spacemen, and they can travel in space without mechanical help. The residents of Siddhaloka can go from one planet to another individually by virtue of their yogic perfection. After giving instruction to the great king Prachinibari, Narada Muni departed and also invited him to Siddhaloka. Text 81. Prachinibarhi Rajarshi Praja Sarga Virakshane Adishya Putra Nagamat Tapase Kapilashramam Prachina Barihi Rajarishi Praja Sarga Virakshane Adishya Putra Nagamat Tapase Kapilashramam Prachini Barhi Rajarshi Praja Sarga Virakshane Adisya Putranagamat Tapase Kapilashramam. Prachini Barhi, King Prachini Barhi, Rajarishi, the saintly king, Prajas Sarga, the mass of citizens, Praja Sarga, the mass of citizens, Abhirakshane, to protect, Adisya, after ordering, Putran, his sons, Agamat, departed, Tapase, for undergoing austerities, Kapilashramam, to the holy place known as Kapilashramam. Translation. In the presence of his ministers, the saintly king Prachanibarhi left orders for his sons to protect the citizens. He then left home and went off to undergo austerities in a holy place known as Kapilashrama. Purport. The word Praja Sarga is very important in this verse. When the saintly king Prachinibari was induced by the great sage Narada to leave home and take to the devotional service of the Lord, his sons had not yet returned from their austerities in the water. However, he did not wait for their return but simply left messages to the effect that his sons were to protect the mass of citizens. According to the Viragavacharya, such protection means organizing the citizens into specific divisions of the four Varnas and four ashramas. It was the responsibility of the royal order to see that the citizens were following the regulative principles of the four Varnas, namely Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. and the ashramas, namely Brahmacharya, Grahastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas. It is very difficult to rule citizens in a kingdom without organizing this Varnashrama Dharma. To rule the mass of citizens in a state and keep them in a complete progressive order is not possible simply by passing laws every year in a legislative assembly. The Varnashrama Dharma is essential in a good in government. One class of men, the Brahmanas, must be intelligent and Brahmanically qualified. Another class must be trained in administrative work, Kshatriya. Another in mercantile business, Vaishya. And another simply in labor, Sudra. These four classes of men are already there according to nature. But it is the government's duty to see that all four of these classes follow the principles of their varnas methodically. This is called abhirakshana or protection. It is significant that when Maharaj Vrachini Barhi was convinced of the goal of life through the instructions of Narada, he did not wait even a moment to see his son's return, but left immediately. There were many things to be done upon the return of his sons, but he simply left them a message. He knew what his prime duty was. He simply left instructions for his sons and went off for the purpose of spiritual advancement. This is the system of Vedic civilization. Sridhara Swami informs us that Kapilashrama is located at the confluence of the Ganges and the Bay of Bengal, a place known now as Ganga Sagara. This place is still famous as a place of pilgrimage, and many millions of people gather there every year on the day of Makara Sankranti and take bath. It is called Kapilashrama because of Lord Kapilash living there to perform his austerities and penances. Lord Kapila propounded the Sankhya system of philosophy. End of report. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shanyavadi Paschatya Deshadarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I humbly seek the blessings of all assembled Vaishnavas and thank you for the opportunity to read and summarize from Srimad Bhagavatam today for my own purification. Please forgive if I add my own interpretation to this summary. Um, So we are in the end of this section about King Prachinibarhi and how Narada Muni met, or Narada Muni was so merciful to come and then instruct him the actual spiritual knowledge so he could course correct King Prachinibarhi. And we have been seeing for quite a number of days now about on this past time how Narada Muni used this allegorical story to preach to King Prachinibarhi because different people are at different level of consciousness and willingness to accept this message. So it has to be the preaching to them has to be in different means. So here, because Prachinibarhi was too much into karma kanda activities, the Muni couldn't tell him directly to stop all that and to take up to the higher spiritual consciousness or Krishna consciousness, but rather through a story, he convinced him, and we are seeing in the section which is towards the end of that discussion how King Prachinibarhi is completely convinced, and now he's acting immediately in the sense that he wants to quit his current material responsibilities, and then he is ready to move ahead and perform austerities to perfect his life per Narada Muni's instructions. So we have seen a lot of important lessons in this section, and maybe just to quickly recap, we saw how recently Narada Muni was kind of finally commenting on how the mind is the main contributor or the designing factor in how what one gets in the next life. It was kind of summarized in text 75 that all the desires stored in the mind make the soul continue to accept new gross bodies, continuing the process of transmigration of the soul. So just like always we see this example that when we see a movie, um, uh, then we feel like, oh, we should watch another movie. And then if we like a character in one of the movies, then we were like, okay, we should also watch another movie of this same character or this person because his acting is very good. So any minute task that we engage the mind in, and the mind immediately wants more of it, and especially for material things, because that's the unthankful task of Maya, that she tries to keep us here. Because I mean, if a student is really serious, he should be um, countering all those temptations by Maya. And then when he proves that he still really wants Krishna, then the effect of Maya reduces. So Prabhupada um, has been like hammering on this point that how the whole material existence started and is going on because of one's intelligence not being pure, and then one has all these material desires in ignorance. So then we saw in text 76 and 77 how Narada Muni uses this very nice example of a caterpillar. He says how the caterpillar transports itself from one leaf to another by capturing one leaf before giving up the other. So similarly, the soul captures a new body before giving up the previous one. And this is very kind of interesting because, I mean, just knowing the fact that what we do today is going to be, or what are we going to do now is going to decide the next body is, I mean, something we can relate to, at the same time something we are not able to relate to, because we know, like, we when we are earning, we try to make some investments just to make sure that in the future we will have some backup, right? I mean, so similarly, the concept makes sense, but again, at least from my perspective, it's hard to believe that okay, whatever I do now will decide my next birth or next existence. So that is something we have to digest and kind of have faith on, and all the scriptures are kind of hammering on that point. And even this section is reminding us that be very, very careful on what we do today and how we engage our mind and senses. We don't want to engage them so they don't return us any good value in the future, which makes sense. So we want to make sure we are engaging correctly, so that our next life is also facilitating our path towards Krishna. And then finally, just before this verse, we saw in text 78 and 79 how Narada Muni concluded his teachings by stating that again, the root of our conditioning is the desire to enjoy sense gratification. So as long as we want to enjoy all these material things, then we just are creating new material activities or desires, and then the cycle just continues. And the example always we also hear is like a kind of a drug addict who knows that it is not good, but he's so much attracted to it that he is determined to take more of it. I mean, just like, I mean, even I have thought about this so many times that, oh, what will this one maybe material activity do to my path of bhakti? Why don't I watch something on YouTube that is not relevant to Krishna consciousness? Or what if I engage in something for a change? So it gives me a break from the normal routine. But again, that may seem like a small one activity, but then that one activity has so many reactions and actions, like a cycle of reactions and action coming up. So it's very, very important that we should, I mean, this section is reminding us that through Narada Muni, his instructions, that we should be very, very careful in what we engage in and what we want, desire, even if it's very small. And finally, we hear Narada Muni's instruction that we should surrender to the Supreme Lord, think about Him, hear about Him. And then, again, for us practically, it may not be possible that we just flip a switch and say, oh, let me surrender to Krishna today, and then completely end my conditional life. Um, but again, as Krishna explains in Gita, and even Arjuna says, Krishna, I can even control the wind, but it's hard for me to control the mind. So again, this is where Prabhupada and the senior other acharyas and the disciple execution has given us a step-by-step approach that we start following their instructions. We take to this process of chanting seriously and then hearing, reading, etc. Because Prabhupada says that when we engage ourselves in devotional service on the Lord, then we understand that not only Krishna, but everything related to Krishna is also Krishna. So, in other words, through Krishna consciousness, we can understand not only Krishna, but then the whole manifestation, our position, our responsibilities, our duties, etc. And then we also appreciate that yeah, Krishna has put us in this material world, which is also Krishna's creation, which is maintained by him and will also be annihilated by him. But we again have a role to play. I mean, we wanted to come here, and that's why we are here. But we have to remember that we are part and parcel of the Lord, and we have the opportunity every second to connect with Him. And again, the last week we heard in the Bachapa retreat about so many nice tips on how to control the mind, how to connect back with Krishna, and then I just want to go over a few things that I remember from the Japa retreat. So the first, one of the most important things that Maharaj was mentioning, based on even different acharyas' commentaries, is that the sankalpa is very important. So when we sit and chant, I mean, the sankalpa is that. This is our one-on-one time with Krishna, right? I mean, for example, in at office, if we have an appointment or a meeting with, say, our boss or like boss's boss, two levels higher, then how attentive would be in that meeting? I mean, we would be taking notes. We would be very attentive, paying attention to every word that person speaks. We respect the time. We don't get distracted. We don't watch our phone or we don't walk while talking with that person. So I mean, it's very simple. In one sense, yeah, that's how important our one-on-one time with Krishna is when we chant, with the goal that we should make Krishna smile. So if we take to that process very seriously and attentively, we will also see the reciprocation from Krishna. And then again, in the Mujapa retreat, we saw how it's going to be a sine curve. I mean, it's not, again, as I said, like a flip of a switch and then everything is fine. But even when trying this process, there will be an up and down going on in our minds. And the more we engage or try to remember Krishna, then our mind will be more controlled during the chanting process. And just want to quickly share one. Just came to my mind that during the Gita Jayanti day, like 2 weeks ago, something very interesting happened. The temple, when we were finishing the Bhagavad Gita reading, one of the ASU students kind of mentioned to me and Shikopal Prabhu about there's a new visitor to the temple, and then that maybe one of us should welcome him and talk to him. And then after we kind of asked him like, who's this person? Do you know this person? This ASU boy was saying that this person was basically a Uber driver, and he had a copy of Bhagavad Gita that he was trying to read, and then on the day, on the night before Gita Jayanti, he got a dream. I mean, it's too good to believe, but this is what he shared, that he got a dream that a blue boy came in his dream and said that today is a very special day and you should read Bhagavad Gita fully. And then this Uber driver, he didn't know what that exactly meant. So he was like thinking about it and he was starting to drive on the Gita Jayanti day, like he was Ubering. And then this ASU student accidentally happened to get onto that Uber car. And then as they were talking about like, oh, like I'm from India. And then immediately that driver asked him like, have you heard about Bhagavad Gita? And then this ASU student said, yeah, of course, I've heard about Bhagavad Gita, and even I'm going to be reading today in the temple. And then this Uber driver immediately realized that dream, and then remembered that dream, and then he shared with him. And then basically, then the ASU student asked him to come to the temple, and this person came in the evening, and he was sitting there attentively listening all 2 hours to the Bhagavad Gita recitation. And then he took a copy of Srila Prabhupada's book also. So I was just remembering, it was a kind of eye-opening event for me because, I mean, I have the Bhagavad Gita, I've been in this process, but we don't realize how fortunate we are for being in contact with Srila Prabhupada's movement and his books and the Devotee Association and Srimad Bhagavatam reading, etc. But For example, Krishna had to come in the dream and then ask him to come to the temple. Somehow arrange him for him to come to the temple to get a copy of Bhagavad Gita so he could read. But we have been like, I've been like given this for like last 15 years and I don't take it seriously. So again, the two things came out of this for me. One is like how Krishna reciprocates. If you're really curious, interested, even if you do something small, Krishna takes 10 steps to reciprocate. Like we can see that from this episode of the Uber driver. And also be grateful of what we have and the devotee association and the opportunity to read Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, because chanting Krishna's name is equivalent to like hearing about Krishna, reading about Krishna, just thinking about Krishna. Everything is very, very, very fruitful. Yep. I mean, the take-home message again is that we should be very thankful for this association, and then we should try our best to be attentive in whatever we do towards Krishna consciousness. With that, I'd like to